Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Imagine a research tool just dropping into academia. And it's so fast, like lightning fast. It can generate these complex, multi-stage research articles in, well, it feels like no time at all. Sounds like science fiction, maybe, but perhaps not anymore. Back in February 2025, OpenAI unleashed this thing called deep research. And people who are actually in academia, like Ethan Malik, he was apparently blown away by the sheer speed just using it for his own projects.
Right. And you had others like Kevin Bryant even sort of throwing out there that, you could potentially write publishable papers, for some journals anyway, in a single day.
A single day
Yeah.
using this tool.
That's where it gets really interesting, doesn't it?
Right.
Because it's not just, oh, I can search faster. It feels like a fundamental shift in how academic work might even be thought about and done.
That's a really crucial point. You immediately saw this ripple, I guess, of both excitement but also, a bit of unease. A tool like this, generating things that quickly, it naturally brings up a ton of questions.
And if you zoom out, it's a big step up for AI's capabilities, getting directly involved in creating academic knowledge itself.
Exactly. And that's the rabbit hole we're diving into today. We've looked at some material that really digs into the potential, well, the game changers, but also the trustworthiness, the long-term stuff. What happens when AI becomes such a big player in research?
Yeah.
This isn't just some tech trend. It feels core to how we discover things, how we validate knowledge. So our mission here really is just to pull out the key insights from these sources, give you a clear picture, the good, the bad, the challenges, but without, getting totally bogged down in the weeds. Think of it as your quick guide to a pretty major development.
And it immediately makes you wonder, right? What kind of shift are we talking about for how things have always been done in academia, with this level of efficiency suddenly possible? Where sources do point out some potentially huge upsides.
Right. So, okay, the benefits, they could be massive. I mean, think about the sheer volume of information researchers deal with. The sources we looked at really highlight AI's power to just crunch through enormous data sets and speed up those literature reviews. That can take forever.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine finding the key studies in like a fraction of the usual time. That alone is a huge boost for productivity.
Precisely. And then there's the actual writing part,
Yeah.
the day-to-day grind for researchers. AI helping streamline that, that's another big potential plus. It's not about replacing the researcher's brain, obviously, but maybe acting as a really good assistant.
Yeah.
Helping them get ideas down faster, maybe clearer. It could free up time for the really deep thinking, the original stuff.
And it seems like it doesn't stop there. This idea of AI helping with peer review keeps coming up too. Like AI doing a first pass on submitted papers,
Yeah.
flagging things, maybe easing the load on human reviewers. That could speed up the whole publication process quite a bit.
That's true. And another angle, interestingly, is global collaboration. AI is pretty good with languages, translation. Could it help break down those barriers? Make it easier for academics to work together across different languages.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, potentially leading to, a richer, more diverse conversation globally.
Okay, so these all sound like pretty significant steps forward, potentially boosting research output quite dramatically. But there's always a but, isn't there? With powerful tools, there's usually a flip side. What are the dangers, the risks of leaning too heavily on AI here?
And this is where we need to pump the brakes a little, perhaps. The sources raise some really fundamental worries, starting with originality, scientific originality.
Right.
It's fascinating. AI is great at synthesizing what's already known, but generating truly new ideas. That seems to be its limitation.
So if researchers rely on it too much.
Well, the risk is we might see fewer genuinely groundbreaking ideas. And maybe researchers' own creative thinking skills could, sort of atrophy a bit.
That's a really critical point. If the AI is always suggesting things, summarizing things, are you doing that deep, difficult, original thinking yourself? And then there's the whole accuracy issue. AI making stuff up, these hallucinations.
Exactly. That's a huge concern. The danger of AI generating misleading or just plain false information. If research gets built on that kind of faulty foundation and there isn't strict human checking, the consequences for the reliability of science could be, well, pretty severe. Human oversight, critical checking, it becomes absolutely essential, non-negotiable, really.
And it's not just factual mistakes, is it? The sources also mention this idea of maybe intellectual laziness or taking shortcuts. If you let the AI do all the heavy lifting intellectually.
Yeah, there's genuine worry that researchers' own analytical skills, their critical thinking muscles, could weaken over time.
Like relying too much on calculators and forgetting basic math.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
And then you get into the really thorny ethical stuff, like AI-driven plagiarism. Using AI content without saying so, that's clearly an ethical problem,
definitely.
which raises big questions about how our current rules on academic integrity, how plagiarism detectors, how they'll need to adapt. It's a moving target.
Which brings us right to the big question. Okay, how do we manage this? How do we navigate these ethical challenges? The sources we looked at do propose some pretty solid sounding guidelines, trying to keep things responsible.
Yeah, one really important proposal that comes up is transparency, just being open about it. The idea of labels, like AI-assisted research, and clearly stating which bits were AI-generated,
Perfect.
that seems like a basic first step.
Makes sense. Gives readers context.
Exactly, and that has to go hand in hand with clear human responsibility. Oversight.
Absolutely. The sources are really strong on this. If AI suggests a source, the human researcher has to check it meticulously.
Mhm.
And in peer review, even if AI helps, the human reviewer has the final say. They have to approve it. The human judgment is still key.
Another interesting idea is this mandatory audit trail for AI work.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, imagine documenting everything. What sources the AI used, what sections it actually wrote, and then what the human researcher changed or added.
Ah, like showing you're working.
Pretty much. A detailed record
Hmm.
could really help with accountability, understanding the process.
Okay, I see. And what about originality? Keeping that standard high.
That's vital. The sources really stress this. AI can mix and match existing stuff, but the new ideas, the truly original contributions, those have to come from the human. And they need to be clearly marked as such in any AI-supported paper,
Right, separating the human spark from the AI's processing.
which links directly to preventing AI plagiarism.
Uh,
The sources suggest treating uncited AI text just like any other plagiarism academic misconduct.
Logical.
Yeah, and they also point out we desperately need to update our plagiarism detection software to actually catch this stuff effectively. It's an ongoing tech race.
And what about students? Because they'll be using this too, right?
For sure. And there are specific guidelines proposed for them too. Seems very practical. Things like, okay, use AI as a tool to help you learn,
Mm-hmm.
but don't submit a thesis written entirely by AI,
Right.
and maybe requiring students to declare if they used AI in their assignments and how. Sort of building responsible habits early on.
So if you pull all these guidelines together, what's the main thrust? It sounds like it's about finding a middle ground.
That's definitely the theme that emerges,
Mhm.
a balanced integration. The sources seem to suggest that, look, AI becoming more common in academia is probably unavoidable,
Yeah, feels that way.
but relying on it completely, that could really damage the core values of research.
So it seems like there are competing views bubbling up. Some people seeing it as this amazing accelerator,
Absolutely. A tool to turbocharge discovery.
while others are much more cautious, worried about, what it does to our own thinking, the nature of academic work itself.
Yeah, and that analogy of AI as a research assistant keeps popping up. It's a powerful helper. It can analyze data, summarize literature, maybe even draft things.
Hmm.
But the core intellectual contribution, the original insight, that stays human. That's the idea behind that model.
Okay. So wrapping this all together, the main argument isn't ban AI. It's more like we need rules, strong, ethical rules.
Precisely. It's about governance. The sources point to several key recommendations for how to move forward. Things like maybe needing special licenses or certification for using AI in research.
Interesting.
Definitely needing clear declaration saying when and how AI was used, and really beefing up how we check sources in AI-assisted work.
And crucially, protecting originality, making sure the human contribution is clear.
Right. And having real teeth when it comes to preventing AI plagiarism. Clear consequences.
So it's about harnessing the power, but doing it ethically, responsibly.
Exactly. The academic world, as the sources suggest, needs to figure out how to ethically weave in the convenience AI offers without losing the critical thinking, the originality, the intellectual rigor that research is built on. It's a tricky balancing act.
Absolutely. So I guess the big takeaway here is AI is definitely shaking things up in academia. Huge potential, yes, but it demands really careful thought about ethics and finding that balance. We can't just ignore it, but we can't just jump in blindly either. It's about thoughtfully integrating it to enhance, not undermine, how we discover and learn.
Well said.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. As this AI tech keeps evolving so quickly, what might the long-term impact be on how we even define academic contribution or intellectual property? And maybe more practically, how can researchers, institutions start preparing now for those deeper shifts that seem likely to be coming down the road? Definitely something to keep thinking about.